There are stories that don't teach us something new, they remind us of something we already knew but had forgotten. The Old Man and the Sea is one of those stories. Not because it offers clear answers, but because it leads us to an inner place where the questions become unavoidable. This is not a literary analysis. It is not a summary. It is not an explanation. It is a crossing. Here, literature is used as a symbolic portal, a quiet mirror of the human condition. A field of inner initiation where solitude, dignity, loss, perseverance, and meaning reveal themselves not as concepts, but as lived experiences. Throughout this video, I don't want you to understand the Old Man intellectually. I want you to recognize yourself in him. In the moments when you choose to continue without applause. On the days when you lose without becoming smaller. In the moments when you remain faithful to something no one sees. If you feel like you've been living too much outwardly and too little inwardly, if something in you is asking for silence, wholeness, and truth, then maybe this story isn't about an old man at sea, but about you right now. Take a deep breath and cross with me. Chosen solitude. When the soul steps away from the noise to listen to itself. There comes a moment in life when the noise of the world stops being merely external. It begins to echo inside. It's no longer just other people's voices, work demands, or the constant flow of information. It becomes something subtler, more intimate. Accumulated expectations, silent comparisons, the feeling of always owing something to life. When I think of the old man heading out to sea before dawn, I don't see just a solitary man doing his job. I see someone who consciously chooses to step away from that noise in order to listen to something deeper within himself. Solitude here is not abandonment. It is not punishment. It is not social rejection. It is a choice, a nearly sacred act of withdrawal. Like someone closing the bedroom door not to escape the world, but to finally hear their own thoughts. How often do we keep socializing, working, producing, talking, without ever truly listening to ourselves? The old man's solitude is not the absence of connection. It is the presence of self. The sea emerges as a symbolic space where the ego loosens its grip and consciousness expands. In modern life, we rarely enter this sea. We're afraid of silence. We fill every gap with screens, sounds, distractions. But silence has a strange effect. It gives back the questions we've avoided for years. Who am I when no one is watching? What still matters when there is no applause? By rowing away from the shore, the old man isn't just looking for fish. He's stepping away from social identity to recover something essential. There is a deep dignity in this gesture. He doesn't need to justify his choice to anyone. He doesn't turn his solitude into a speech. He simply goes. And this reveals something we've forgotten. Some journeys don't ask for an audience. They ask for inner honesty. When we choose moments of withdrawal, a solitary walk, a blank notebook, extended silence, we are not isolating ourselves from the world. We are preparing to return to it more whole. In depth psychology, chosen solitude is a portal. It's the moment when social masks begin to fall away. That efficient, strong, controlled version of ourselves loses its footing when no one is watching. And in that space, fragility emerges, old fears, forgotten desires. The old man does not flee from this. He stays. He accepts his own company, something many people avoid their entire lives. There is also a subtle, non-dogmatic spiritual dimension here. The sea is not an enemy, nor a resource to be exploited. It is a mystery to be respected. In the same way, inner silence is not something to dominate. It is something to inhabit. When you allow yourself to be alone, without distraction, without immediate purpose, something begins to reorganize inside. Not dramatically, but slowly, almost imperceptibly. Think about your own life. How often do you feel like you're always reacting, never choosing? Answering messages, meeting deadlines, fulfilling expectations that were never truly examined. Chosen solitude doesn't require grand gestures. Sometimes it begins with 15 minutes of silence in the morning, or with the decision not to fill an entire weekend. The old man shows us that it's not the amount of time, but the quality of presence. There is initial discomfort in this process. Silence doesn't comfort right away. It confronts. It exposes accumulated exhaustion, undigested frustration, the sense of living in fragments. But this discomfort is the first sign that something healthy is happening. Like detoxification in the body, before relief comes pain, before clarity comes heaviness. The old man does not romanticize his solitude. He feels the weight of his body, the hardness of routine, the uncertainty of return. And still he goes. This teaches something essential. Spiritual maturity is not the absence of fear, but the decision not to be ruled by it. Chosen solitude is an act of quiet courage, a commitment to oneself. Perhaps the deepest point is this: those who never learn to be alone end up living hostage to validation. They need to be seen, approved, recognized in order to feel real. The old man no longer depends on that. His dignity doesn't come from outside. It arises from the coherence between who he is and how he lives. And that coherence is built in silence. By heading out to sea, he initiates a crossing that will not be merely physical. Something in him has already begun to move. Something has been loosened. Something has been prepared. And without knowing it yet, this solitude will be tested, deepened, and transformed by the encounters ahead. If this first movement resonates with you, it may be because a part of your own consciousness is also asking for a temporary retreat from the noise, not as escape but as return. Something greater always begins this way, in silence, far from shore, before dawn. The old man who still dreams, dignity, memory, and the time that does not retire consciousness. There is a quiet image running through this entire story, that of a man who carries the weight of years but has not surrendered his right to dream. Not naive dreams, not fantasies of glory. Dreams as living memory, as a flame that resists time. The old man doesn't dream to escape reality, he dreams to continue belonging to it. In a world that equates value with productivity, youth, and performance, this image confronts us deeply. Modern society teaches, subtly and cruelly, that meaning has an expiration date. After a certain age, one is expected to merely repeat routines, accept externally imposed limits, and reduce desire to the minimum tolerable level. The old man breaks with this without speeches, without overt rebellion. He simply continues. He keeps going out to sea. He keeps dreaming of lions on the beach. He keeps sensing himself alive inside. These dreams are not empty nostalgia. They don't point to an idealized past, but to a deep identity that time has not eroded. The lions symbolize vitality, primal strength, full presence in the body. When the old man dreams, he does not see himself as fragile. He sees himself as whole. This reveals something essential. Psychological aging does not happen in the body, but in the consciousness that abandons its inner symbols. In depth psychology, losing contact with one's symbols is what generates true exhaustion. It's not physical fatigue that breaks us, but the sense that nothing lives inside us anymore. The old man, even exhausted, is still inhabited by living images. He still speaks with his memory as one speaks with an ally, not as someone mourning what was lost. There is dignity in this. A quiet, unclaimed dignity. He does not demand respect. He embodies it. In a world obsessed with novelty, he reminds us that depth does not age. Mature consciousness does not lose value, it gains density. Every gesture of the old man carries layers of experience that don't need explanation to be felt. How many people do you know, maybe even yourself, who, despite being young, have already given up on dreaming? Not from lack of ability but from excess frustration. Gradually, they shrink their desires to avoid pain. They resize their dreams to fit their fear. The old man does the opposite. He accepts the risk of continuing to desire, even knowing he might lose. There is a delicate spiritual teaching here. Dreaming is not denying reality, it is dialoguing with it from the soul. The old man's dreams do not promise success. They sustain identity. They remind him who he is when the world tries to convince him otherwise. Dreaming at this level is an act of inner resistance. Time, for him, is not an enemy to be fought, nor a judge declaring uselessness. Time is a field of experience. Each lived year deepens his relationship with the sea, with the body, with limitation. He does not try to appear young. He does not deny age. He integrates time into his presence. In everyday life, this invites an uncomfortable question. When did we begin to retire inwardly? I'm not talking about work or career, but curiosity, courage, inner listening. How often do we say, "That's no longer for me," without examining whether that voice comes from wisdom or fear? Keeping dreams alive does not mean clinging to the same external projects. It means preserving an inner axis of meaning. Maybe today your dreams no longer have the same shape they once did. Maybe they need to be translated into different gestures, different rhythms. The old man shows us that adapting is not abandoning. Changing is not betraying oneself. There is something profoundly human about watching someone age without becoming cynical, without hardening the soul, without turning disappointment into bitterness. The old man is not naive, but he is not closed. He remains available to experience, and that is rare. As he heads out to sea, carrying his dreams like an invisible compass, something prepares itself once again. These dreams will not remain mere memories. They will be summoned, tested, put on trial before something far greater than himself. And it is at this point that the sea stops being just scenery and begins to reveal itself as something deeper, more alive, more demanding than any memory. Something that cannot be conquered. Something that must be encountered. The sea is living consciousness, respect, dialogue, and intimacy with mystery. There is a subtle but decisive difference between fighting something and relating to something. The old man does not enter the sea as one who invades territory. He enters as one who returns to a space that is familiar, yet never mastered. For him, the sea is not an object, not a resource, not a neutral backdrop. The sea is presence. It is otherness. It is something that responds even when it remains silent. And this posture changes everything. In modern life, we've been trained to treat almost everything as a thing. Time is something to be managed. The body, something to be optimized. Emotions, something to be controlled. Even mystery we try to reduce to concepts. The old man does the opposite. He approaches the sea with respect, almost with intimacy. Not because he fully understands it, but precisely because he knows he does not. This relationship reveals a mature form of consciousness. He does not project hostility onto the sea when things become difficult. He does not curse it. He does not idealize it. He recognizes both its greatness and its indifference. The sea does not exist to help him, nor to harm him. It simply is. And learning to stand before something like that requires inner humility. Spiritually, this is a crucial point. Many existential crises arise when we treat life as something that owes us answers, as if there were an implicit contract between effort and reward. The old man has moved beyond this illusion. He does not enter the sea expecting justice. He enters willing to encounter. This changes the quality of the experience. There is also a silent dialogue taking place. He speaks to the sea, to the fish, to himself, not as someone delusional, but as someone who recognizes that consciousness is not an isolated phenomenon. When we remain in silence long enough, something within us begins to respond, not with clear sentences, but with intuitions, fine adjustments, subtle perceptions. How often, when facing a problem, do we insist on imposing our will instead of listening to the context? Whether in relationships, professional decisions, or personal crises, we treat situations as obstacles to overcome rather than realities to be understood. The sea teaches another posture, attentive presence before action. The old man knows there are days when the sea gives and days when it takes away, and he does not take this personally. This is a deep psychological lesson. When we stop interpreting everything as attack or reward, we gain emotional stability. The sea does not validate the old man, but it does not humiliate him either. It simply reveals how much he is willing to sustain his own presence. There is an implicit ethic in this relationship. Respect is not born of fear, but of recognizing the intrinsic value of the other. The old man does not place himself above the sea, nor beneath it. He places himself in relation. And that requires a rare kind of inner balance. In everyday life, this teaching can be lived simply, yet transformatively. Instead of immediately asking, "How do I fix this?" perhaps the more honest question is, "What is this situation asking of me?" This does not eliminate action. It changes its quality. Action stops being reactive and becomes integrated. The sea, as living consciousness, also mirrors the old man's inner state. In moments of clarity, he navigates with greater precision. In moments of exhaustion, the sea becomes more threatening, not because it has changed but because perception has. So it is with us. The external world often simply amplifies what is already happening inside. There is something deeply healing in realizing that we don't need to dominate everything in order to live with dignity. The old man does not control the sea, but he does not feel powerless before it either. He adapts, observes, responds. This is a wisdom learned not from books, but from prolonged coexistence with mystery. As he ventures deeper into the sea, this relationship will be tested in radical ways. Respect will turn into confrontation. Silent dialogue will become sustained tension. And something will rise from the depths, not as an enemy, but as an amplified mirror of everything the old man is capable of holding. The enormous fish, purpose, vocation, and the confrontation with what surpasses us. At some point in the journey, what was mere presence becomes challenge. Not just any challenge, but one that demands everything. The enormous fish appears not as chance but as response, not as a reward but as a summons. When the old man feels the power of the fish on the other end of the line, he understands immediately, this is not just a catch. It is an encounter with something greater than himself. There are experiences in life that we don't choose, but that seem to choose us. They arise when we are already tired, when there are no witnesses, when there are no guarantees. A project that demands more than we imagined. A relationship that calls us to mature for real. a crisis that forces us to redefine who we are. The fish symbolizes exactly this, a purpose that does not conform to our comfort. The old man does not exalt himself before the fish. He does not celebrate too soon. He recognizes the greatness of what stands before him, and at the same time, his own smallness. But he does not retreat. This is a fundamental distinction. Recognizing one's limits is not the same as giving up. On the contrary, it allows for lucid commitment. In existential philosophy, meaning is not something we receive ready-made. It emerges from the confrontation between who we are and what demands that we grow. The fish does not exist to be conquered as a trophy. It exists to reveal the old man's inner stature. The stronger the fish, the more precise the man's presence must be. How often, when faced with something too big, do we try to shrink the challenge instead of expanding consciousness? We negotiate our dreams so they fit our fear. The old man does the opposite. He expands himself. Not through brute force, but through persistence, attention, and the capacity to remain in tension without breaking apart. There is a specific kind of solitude here. Not the initial solitude of choice, but the solitude of sustaining something no one else can sustain for you. No one can pull that line in your place. No one can carry that weight. This applies directly to inner life. Certain decisions, processes, and maturations are non-transferable. The fish also represents vocation, not in the narrow professional sense, but as an existential calling. That which, even while exhausting us, makes us feel alive. That which demands sacrifice but does not empty us. On the contrary, it organizes us from within. The old man suffers, but he does not feel that he is betraying himself. There is a deep ethic in how he relates to the fish. He respects it. He admires it. He calls it brother. This reveals something rare. True purpose does not humiliate what it encounters. It recognizes the value of the other, even in confrontation. When we lose this ethic, meaning degenerates into empty ambition. In everyday life, this shows up in how we deal with our most demanding challenges. Do you try to overcome them quickly just to escape discomfort? Or do you accept that some processes require time, patience, and sustained presence? The old man shows us that certain achievements are not fast because they are not superficial. The fish pulls. The body aches. Night advances. And still the old man remains. He does not romanticize suffering, but he does not flee from it either. He learns to balance force and surrender, when to insist and when to yield a few inches so as not to lose everything. This dance between control and surrender is one of the work's greatest spiritual lessons. Something is being forged here, not just muscle or endurance but character. With each passing hour, the old man redefines himself in relation to his limits. He discovers that he is more capable than he imagined, not because he wins quickly, but because he does not abandon himself halfway through. And the longer the confrontation lasts, the clearer it becomes. This fish is not merely something to be brought to the surface. It is an amplified mirror. It forces the old man to become someone he might never have become had he chosen something smaller. But every approach to something great exacts a price. And that price has not yet been revealed. What seems like victory will begin to transform. And another kind of strength, perhaps even more difficult, will be required to cross what comes next. Pain, limitation, and perseverance. When the body fails but the spirit learns to remain, there is a point in the crossing where heroism dissolves. There is no more enthusiasm, no expectation, no surplus strength. What remains is only the tired body, wounded hands, and a persistent pain that cannot be ignored. This is where the narrative stops speaking about conquest and begins speaking about staying. The old man is no longer proving anything. He is simply remaining. Pain at this stage is not dramatic. It is continuous. It is the kind of pain that does not scream but also does not leave. The kind that accompanies every movement, every breath, every attempt to adjust. How many pains like this do we carry in life? Not the great tragedies, but the quiet erosions. Relationships that demand more than they give, prolonged responsibilities, choices that charge us daily with no promise of immediate relief. The old man's body begins to fail, and this is neither hidden nor beautified. He feels cramps, open wounds, exhaustion. Here lies a deep psychological lesson. Denying the body's limits is denying our own humanity. The old man does not deceive himself into believing he is invincible. He acknowledges the limit, and precisely because of that, he learns how to move within it. There is a fundamental difference between enduring and persevering. To endure is to resist by hardening. To persevere is to continue without losing sensitivity. The old man feels pain, but he does not become bitter. He suffers, but he does not rebel against his own condition. This reveals a rare level of inner maturity, the ability to remain open even when it hurts. In everyday life, many people break not because the pain is too great but because it lasts too long. We were not educated for duration. We want quick solutions, immediate relief, clear answers. The old man teaches us that some crossings are not solved, they are endured. One day at a time. One adjustment at a time. One breath at a time. There is something deeply spiritual in this kind of perseverance. It is not faith in an outcome but fidelity to a process. The old man does not know if he will succeed. He does not cling to promises. He anchors himself in presence, in the now, in the next gesture that can still be made. Notice how he speaks to himself. Not with empty motivational slogans, but with simple, almost tender words. He encourages himself like someone who cares. This is crucial. The way we speak to ourselves in moments of pain determines whether we will cross the limit or fracture within it. How often, when you feel tired, do you turn violent inwardly? Accusing yourself, comparing yourself, demanding more than is possible? The old man does the opposite. He acknowledges pain, but he does not humiliate himself for feeling it. He does not turn limitation into guilt. And this preserves something essential: dignity. The perseverance that emerges here is neither stubborn nor aggressive. It is patient, almost humble. He knows he cannot defeat the fish by force, so he learns to defeat it by remaining. And this is one of the greatest existential lessons. Not everything yields to intensity, some things yield only to constancy. Time stretches, night passes, day returns. The old man is still there. Each additional hour does not make him physically stronger, but it makes him more integrated. Body and spirit begin to work together, not in opposition. He respects the body, but he does not allow himself to be governed by it alone. There comes a moment in life when we realize we are no longer trying to get there. We are trying not to lose ourselves along the way. This is the most delicate moment of any maturation process. The old man is exactly there. And when something finally begins to give, it is not only the fish. It is a silent understanding. He may fail externally, but he has not failed internally. He has remained faithful to what he chose to sustain. And this prepares the ground for a victory that, paradoxically, already begins to reveal its cost. Because the crossing is not over yet. And what was gained through pain will now need to be protected in a world that does not always recognize the value of silent effort. Victory without witnesses, acting with honor when no one is watching. There are victories that do not ask for celebration. Not because they are small, but because they happen too far from human eyes. When the old man finally manages to guide the fish, there is no applause, no witnesses, no heroic narrative being built. There is only him, the sea, and the result of a fidelity sustained in silence. And this completely changes the meaning of victory. We live in a culture that measures value by visibility. What is not seen seems not to exist. What is not recognized seems not to matter. The old man dismantles this logic without saying a word. His honor is not born of external approval, but of internal coherence. He acts with integrity even when no one can confirm his effort. This is one of the most difficult tests of human maturity, doing what needs to be done when there is no immediate reward. Holding to principles when no one is watching. Remaining faithful to a value that generates no likes, praise, or status. The old man shows us that true ethics are solitary. In depth psychology, this is the moment when the ego loses centrality. There is no longer image building. No need to prove anything to the world. The old man does not fish to be admired. He fishes because it expresses who he is. And when action flows from identity, it does not depend on an audience. How often do we fail to do what is right because no one will see it? Or do it only while we are being observed? This dependence on external validation makes us fragile. The absence of recognition is enough for us to abandon ourselves. The old man crossed that threshold long ago. There is also a silent respect for the fish. He does not celebrate its death as triumph. He acknowledges the greatness of what was faced. This reveals a mature spirituality. Victory does not humiliate the other. It does not need to diminish anything to affirm itself. In daily life, this translates into simple but profound actions. Caring for one's character. Honoring a commitment made to oneself. Treating someone with dignity even when it brings no benefit. These invisible gestures are what build an integrated life. The old man knows the world may never know what happened at sea. And this does not trouble him. He does not turn his experience into a speech. He does not need to narrate it to validate it. The experience is real because it was lived, not because it was recognized. There is immense freedom in this. When we stop depending on the external gaze, something loosens inside. Anxiety diminishes. Comparison loses its grip. Life becomes simpler and deeper at the same time. But this silent victory carries a paradox. What was gained with such integrity must now survive the return. And the return is always more exposed than the departure. The old man does not yet know it, but his honor will be tested in another way, not in isolation but in relationship with forces that do not respect human effort. Victory without witnesses is pure while it lasts. The world, however, does not preserve purity. It wears it down, consumes it, distorts it. And it is in this friction that we will see whether the old man's dignity is circumstantial or truly rooted. Something approaches. Something that does not dialogue, does not respect, does not recognize. And a different kind of courage will be required to face what comes next. Loss that is not defeat, when the essential cannot be stolen. There is a moment when the narrative seems to invert its meaning. What was gained through so much effort begins to be slowly destroyed. Not by the old man's failure, not by lack of merit, but by the very logic of the world. The sharks appear one by one, indifferent to history, sacrifice, and honor. And here, something profound is revealed. Not every loss is defeat. This is one of the most difficult experiences to integrate in adult life. You do everything right, remain whole, sustain the process, and still lose. You lose recognition, visible results, the very thing that seemed to justify the effort. The old man leads us to this point without anesthesia. Life does not spare him for having acted with dignity. The sharks are not merely animals. They symbolize impersonal forces, where envy, entropy, time, systems that consume without asking. They are losses that do not negotiate. Situations where explaining, justifying, or proving value makes no difference. They simply happen. The old man's reaction is crucial. He fights. He does not surrender passively. He does what is within his reach. But at some point it becomes clear. He will not win this battle on the external plane. And still, something within him remains inviolable. This is the heart of the teaching. In depth psychology, this is called the differentiation between identity and outcome. When we confuse who we are with what we achieve, any loss destroys us. The old man does not make this mistake. The fish can be devoured, but integrity cannot be torn away. How many times have you felt emptied after losing something you fought for honestly? A job, a relationship, a project, a phase of life. The pain is not only in the loss but in the sense of injustice. The old man feels this. He is not indifferent. But he does not break. There is a mature spirituality in this posture. Not one that promises rewards, but one that sustains meaning even when external logic fails. The old man does not console himself with metaphysical explanations. He remains standing within the loss. Most striking is that he does not become cynical. He does not curse the sea. He does not close himself off. He does not harden. He accepts that the world is not just in the human sense of the word, and still chooses not to betray himself. In everyday life, this invites us to reconsider what we call success. If everything we build can be lost, where is true value? Perhaps it lies in how we cross loss. In the way we continue to recognize ourselves even when what defined us externally falls apart. To lose without losing oneself is a rare art. It requires a solid inner axis. It requires having built meaning beyond possession, status, or final results. The old man does not defeat the sharks, but neither is he defeated by them. There is a silent sentence here, echoing without being spoken. They can take what I brought back, but they cannot take who I became. This distinction changes everything. It transforms loss into testimony. And when the old man returns, carrying only bones, the world will see only what is missing. But something essential has been preserved. Something not yet recognized. Something that will reveal itself not in the spectacle of victory, but in the quietness of return. The boy and the old man, silent transmission, legacy, and human maturation. When everything seems lost on the visible plane, something unexpected reveals itself on the human plane. The boy remains. He observes, learns, recognizes. Not through speeches but through presence. The relationship between the old man and the boy is one of the most delicate expressions of the work, because it speaks of something that cannot be taught directly. Maturity transmitted through the way of being. The old man does not educate the boy through formal lessons. He does not offer abstract advice. He lives. And the boy learns by observing how he lives. This reveals a deep truth about human legacy. What truly marks another is not our words but our coherence. In developmental psychology, we know that the deepest learning occurs through identification, not instruction. The boy does not admire the old man because he always wins, but because he remains whole even when he loses. This image imprints more deeply than any spectacular success. The boy represents the continuity of consciousness. Not merely in a biological sense but symbolically. He carries the possibility that what was lived will not be lost, that dignity, patience, and silent ethics will cross time. By accepting the boy's presence, the old man allows his experience to find a future. There is something profoundly human in this relationship. All of us, at some point, are both old men and boys at the same time. We carry matured parts and learning parts. The meeting of these inner dimensions is essential for psychic integration. When we reject our younger part, we harden. When we reject our mature part, we lose ourselves. The old man does not place himself above the boy. He does not use experience as power. He shares but does not impose. This posture reveals a rare wisdom. Those who truly know do not need to dominate. They teach without humiliating. They guide without invading. In daily life, this invites us to reconsider how we relate to those who learn with us. Children, students, colleagues, younger people. Do you teach from fear of losing relevance, or from a genuine desire to transmit something essential? The old man chooses the latter. The boy, in turn, offers something to the old man, recognition without judgment. He does not measure the old man by the lost fish, but by the man he is. This gaze restores. All of us, at some point, need someone who sees us beyond results. A silent healing is taking place here. The old man does not return as a hero, but he does not return as a failure either. He returns as a reference. And that is far rarer. References do not need to win all the time. They need to be true. The boy's presence also points toward something ahead. What was lived at sea does not end there. It will be remembered, transformed, perhaps reinterpreted. Experience finds continuity in relationship. And this gives meaning to the suffering endured. There is a deep spirituality in this act of transmission. It is not about immortality but shared meaning. What is lived with integrity does not die. It shifts. It finds new hands, new eyes, new times. As this relationship strengthens, something closes and something opens. The cycle of the inner crossing nears its end. But one essential movement remains, returning to the common world with everything that was lived, without denying the pain, without clinging to glory, without closing oneself off from life. The old man is now ready for this. The boy is too. And we, as witnesses to this journey, may begin to realize that true inheritance lies not in what is achieved, but in what is embodied. The return to the village, everyday life after the inner crossing. Every true crossing demands a return. Not as repetition but as reintegration. The old man returns to the village carrying only bones, and yet carrying everything. The everyday world receives him exactly as it always has. Simple, limited, incapable of fully understanding what happened at sea. And that is part of the process. There is a quiet disillusionment in this return. After touching something profound, we expect the world to recognize it, validate it, change along with us. But that rarely happens. Life goes on. People remain busy. Structures stay the same. The old man finds no external consolation for the intensity he lived through. This is a common experience for those who undergo significant inner transformations. A crisis overcome, a loss integrated, a spiritual crossing. None of this guarantees understanding from others. Often the return is solitary. Not because the experience lacks value, but because its value cannot be immediately translated. The old man does not try to explain what he lived through. He does not turn his crossing into discourse. He withdraws. He sleeps. He rests. He allows the body to integrate what the soul has crossed. There is deep wisdom in this. Not every experience asks to be shared immediately. Some ask for silence and assimilation. In psychological terms, this is the moment of integration. Everything that was lived needs to find a place in ordinary life. Otherwise, it becomes inflated memory or undigested trauma. The old man does not cling to the event. He allows it to become part of who he is, without needing to constantly recall it. There is also a mourning here. Mourning for what did not return. For the fish that was lost. For the recognition that never came. The old man does not deny this mourning, but he does not define himself by it either. He accepts the loss without turning it into identity. In everyday life, this confronts us with a delicate question. What do we do after we grow inwardly? Do we keep demanding that the world correspond to our transformation, or do we learn to live in a simpler, more discreet, more aligned way? The return to the village teaches us that maturity is not exhibition. It is sobriety. It is the ability to keep living without needing to prove what one has become. The old man does not need to be understood by everyone. It is enough to be recognized by those who truly see, and sometimes, that is only one person. There is something profoundly human in this final scene of the crossing. The extraordinary does not replace the ordinary. It passes through it. Meaning does not remove us from common life. It returns us to it with a different gaze. The old man now walks more slowly. Not because he is defeated but because he is whole. He carries in his body the marks of the crossing, but he does not display them. He rests, knowing he did everything that was within his reach. This return prepares the ground for something greater than the old man's own story. It prepares the ground for transmission, for application, for the silent question that lingers in the air. What do we do with what transforms us? Here the 9 movements are completed. The crossing has been made. The inner arc has been traveled. Now something even more challenging remains. Bringing this wisdom into a concrete, ordinary, contemporary life, with its noise, pressures, and dilemmas. That is where a new story begins. Not at sea but in the life of someone like us. The man who left before dawn. I knew him without really knowing him. He was an ordinary man. Nothing about him drew attention. He had worked for years in the same role, woke up early, came home tired, did what needed to be done. To the eyes of passers-by, his life seemed small. But there was something in him that could not be explained. A kind of older, deeper fatigue, as if it were not only his body that was exhausted. That morning he woke up before the alarm. It was still dark. The house was asleep. The world too. He sat on the edge of the bed for a few minutes, feeling the weight of his own body, of the choices made, of those not made. It was not sadness. It was something quieter, the sense of living beneath his own measure. He did not go out to run or to produce or to distract himself. He left without a clear objective. He walked to a simple place, a nearly empty park, a long street, some spot where he could be alone. For the first time in a long while, he did not bring headphones, did not open his phone, did not try to fill the silence. He simply stayed. At first, the silence was uncomfortable. Thoughts emerged like invisible sharks. Comparisons, regrets, unanswered questions. He almost went back home. But something in him decided to stay. Not out of heroism. Out of exhaustion from running away. There, sitting, he realized something essential. He had spent years trying to win external battles while abandoning the only thing he truly needed to sustain, his own presence. He had traded dignity for adaptation, meaning for survival. And that corroded him more than any visible failure. In that silence, there was no spectacular revelation, no enlightened phrases. There was only a simple and radical decision, to return to acting in coherence with what he knew to be true, even if it brought no recognition at all. In the days that followed, nothing changed externally. The job was the same. The people were the same. But something changed in how he placed himself in the world. He began to do what needed to be done with greater wholeness. Not to prove his worth, but to avoid betraying himself. He started small. He kept promises made to himself. He said some difficult no's. He said some quiet yes. He returned to learning things he had abandoned. Not to be seen but to feel alive inside. There were losses. Not everyone understood his change. Some drifted away. Projects did not work out. Results did not appear as he had imagined. On certain days, it felt as if everything he built was devoured before reaching the shore. But strangely, he did not feel defeated. Because, like the old man at sea, he began to understand something no one had taught him. The world can take your results, but it cannot take your integrity, unless you allow it. At one specific moment, after a significant loss, someone asked him whether it had been worth it. He thought before answering. He thought of the fatigue, the long nights, the solitude of decisions without applause. And he answered, with a calm that surprised even himself. It was worth it, because I did not lose myself. That answer impressed no one, but it sustained him. Over time, someone younger drew closer. He did not ask for advice. He simply observed. He sensed there was a rare steadiness there, a dignity that did not depend on success. Without realizing it, that man had become a reference point, not for winning but for remaining true. And here is where everything closes. The story of the old man is not about fishing. It is about how to live without abandoning oneself. It is not about victory. It is about coherence. It is not about strength. It is about sustained presence. All of us at some point are called to leave before dawn, to step away from the noise, to face something greater than ourselves, to lose what we thought defined us, and still to return whole. Perhaps you are at that point now, tired but lucid, wounded but not broken, without applause yet still faithful to something essential. If there is one thing this crossing teaches us, it is this. A man can be destroyed externally, but he does not have to be defeated internally. The question that remains is not whether you will win. It is whether you will remain who you know yourself to be, even when no one is watching.